Hey there! Did you know we have a Patreon? You can get early access to all of our content with any amount pledge. Consider it and spread the word. Now on to the show. Spoiler warning. This podcast will spoil elements from both the gameplay and story for Final Fantasy IX. Hello, guys, and welcome to another episode of Why We Love, a podcast where we kind of pancake out about specific games or franchises of games. Today, we're going to be talking about Final Fantasy IX. One of the I know that people have like their own lists about what Final Fantasy games they love, or which ones are like the best ones, and people usually have 6 or 9 up there. So it's really interesting that we're going to be talking about that game. And while I do like Final Fantasy IX, I believe that I have with me 2 guests that love it even more than I do. So it's going to be really interesting to talk with them about it. And yeah, my guests are Leonardo and Roberto. Say hi, guys.
Hey,
Hi.
And we're all, I guess we all like different things about the game, but in general, we do like many of the same things. So I believe that we're going to be starting talking about a little bit in general about the game. So no spoilers for now, but eventually we will get into spoilers. So if you haven't played the game, I just want to know kind of why we love it, or what makes it really cool. Stay for now, and eventually if you want to play the game for yourself and want to see what the game, like the story, is all about and all that, then at that point when we get to spoilers, well, that we will let you know. Then you can just stop the video, play the game, and then eventually come back and maybe see a little bit more specifics, right, as to what we like about it. So anyway, as I said before, many people really love this game. Many people see this game as a, because after 6 and 7, like the fantasy setting or the original fantasy qualities of the Final Fantasy franchise were not lost, but kind of changed into a little bit more of an industrialized version of that fantasy. And I believe that many people see 9 as a going back to that, right? Going back to the roots of Final Fantasy. And you can see that in many ways, but I believe that the best way to say, you can literally see like that that happening is with Bibi, right? With one of the characters that literally looks like one of the, like, he's what is called a black mage in Final Fantasy, right? And he looks exactly like the black mages of the first games. And when I say first games, I mean like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and all that. And he looks just like them. Of course, he's not literally the same as those black mages, and I'm pretty sure we're gonna get into that eventually. But he does look the same. So I'm not saying that it's literally like one of those older worlds in a new setting or whatever. It's still its own world, right? The world of Final Fantasy IX, but it does share some qualities with it. And I believe that I really enjoyed that. I believe that I enjoyed the idea that it had a different aesthetic from the other games that because I like the first game that I played from Final Fantasy was 7. So I went from 7, then 8, then 9, and then 10, and all, and like just sequentially in that order in a way. So when I saw 9, it did feel very different from the other ones. But I believe that I didn't mind that at all. Like it looks really interesting. I remember it a lot because of that fact, because of the fact that it looks so different from 7 or 8, which were the ones that I played. So it's just really interesting to me that many people, I know that's true for many people, because I know that like 7 was the first Final Fantasy that was super uber popular in the United States. I'm not saying that the other ones weren't, but 7 was like the one that kind of broke that and became like the de facto JRPG for the United States in a way. Which is why many people like really like Cloud and Sephiroth and all that stuff and know about them. But yeah, like many of those people then went from 7 to 8, and 8 kind of was a little bit more modern, but eventually then they got to 9, and 9 really went for the fantasy stuff and the animal like people and all that. But again, it didn't bother me a lot. I know there are some people that it did bother them a little bit, but I really like the aesthetic that they went for. I mean, did you guys like that? Did you guys like that change? I know that some of you have played, or at least played the previous Final Fantasies before 7, maybe. So you can maybe have a different perspective. Leo, like for example, for you, like, do you like how was that change for you? Like going back to that OG Final Fantasy style of characters and stuff.
Well, the thing is that my first Final Fantasy was actually Final Fantasy 7.
Okay.
And then after Final Fantasy 7, I started playing all the other ones. So I can't claim to have felt a lot of nostalgia from 9. Like anyone that actually played them in order, or at least as much as I could, since I think like 2 or 3 of the Final Fantasies, the original 6, were not part of the US until much later.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I can't really say, oh yeah, I really love the fact that they went back to my Final Fantasy, because 7 was my first one.
Okay.
And therefore, when I experienced 9, the world of 9 for me was more original to me until I started like actually playing the older ones, and then I said, oh hey, 9 was actually like alluding to all this stuff.
No, yeah, I actually remember that. I played Final Fantasy 3, and there were so many things that, like items in particular, that appeared, and I believe for the first time in those games, and then eventually I see them all over the other Final Fantasies, but in 9 specifically, like the different armors and all stuff that you can give people, and the swords and the save the queens and all those things, right? That are a little bit more like, for example, in other games they kind of change what those things are. Like suddenly a different character can have a whip that is called Save the Queen, but it started as a sword, and then you can get that sword in 9, right? So when I played those games, like for the first time after 9, it kind of became clear that, like, wow, 9 was literally just a big love letter to those first Final Fantasies. Like, yeah, you like that, we're kind of trying to go back to that, but giving it a little twist, because it's not necessarily like the same thing. Like, for example, in the case of BB, we're gonna get into spoilers eventually, but he's like, in the other, as far as I understand it, I don't know if you guys know more than me, but like the other black mages were literally like people that kind of had those outfits, right? Or
no, they were, I think, its own manufactured race or just constructs.
No, not in 9. I meant in the first ones, like in the.
Oh yeah, they were.
They just had the costumes and.
No, yeah, the robes. That's what I mean. That 9 uses that, but has a twist on it, because of course the black mages in 9 are not in any way the same black mages that appeared in those first games.
Yeah, I mean, I think that what they do with the characters in itself, they stuck with the stereotypical classes and stuff like that, but without using the robes and the this is a white mage, with the exception of Bibi and probably Freya. The other ones weren't really, the if you take a monk, or if you take a red mage, or if you take blue mage, for example, for Quina, they have their own character.
Yeah,
Usually
yeah,
in the first Final Fantasies, the the character became second to the class,
yeah, 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 yeah,
and in here it was this the class was more a part
Yeah.
of the character, but not necessarily the main focus.
and
Right.
they're really well written. Also, like you, I've when I first felt Zidane, I guess, talking and doing because he's very different from the typical like Final Fantasy main character, right? He just felt more lively in a way to others, and the way he's written, you get that, you get that idea that he's a little bit more happy than many of the other characters, and more like detailed in many ways. Because of course you can say that, for example, Bart's from Five is also a very like happy-go-lucky guy. Like he just kind of goes and explores and all that stuff. But like with the limitations of Five, you can't really get that. Like in Nine, you literally get to see Zidane acting and doing stuff, and when they say he's a womanizer, you see that actually happening. Like you see him womanizing and being like a very yeah, gigolo type character, because that's kind of what they try to imply from the get go.
Yeah.
And I like that fact that coming from Cloud Squall and then to Sedan, you get that that very stark contrast, between them. Uh,
Yeah.
do you guys like Sedan more than the other ones, or do you agree that he was different from them?
Well, in the case of different, that was definitely different. And I'm
Yes.
a bit biased because Final Fantasy VIII is my favorite, not necessarily the best Final Fantasy, but my favorite for other reasons.
Yeah.
But in terms of being different, yeah, definitely is different.
Yes, I like that he is definitely quite a fresh take on a protagonist after certain other protagonists from other games. From other previous games.
Yeah.
But now that you mention it, although even though Six didn't really have a clear protagonist, I think
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I do find him close to Locke or Lucky. I don't know how you say it. Locke.
yeah, it was pretty much the same
Not
character with
not
the
the same.
exception that
Not the
he
same.
was a lot older and he was a bit more serious than Sudain. Sudain was, I mean, he's 15, right, in the game?
16. Yes.
16. So he's still, he's still a kid. So
Yeah.
he sometimes acted like a kid.
Yeah.
Uh,
I
Locke is more mature, and obviously a lot of other things happen.
yeah,
But
yeah, exactly. No, yeah, I really like not only Zidane but many of the characters in this game. Even some of the like the supporting cast. Like I like the people he hang out with, like his circus slash
Yes, Santos.
I
Santos,
mean thief.
his
Uh,
gang of
yeah, his
thieves.
gang. Yeah, like that's really cool. I like those guys. I like what happens with many of them. Like the whole idea behind like the places that you visit. They all have their own things going on. Alexandria is really interesting. I don't remember what Freya's home place is called, but it's a place that is always raining. That's super interesting as well. And what happened with all that, like the whole. I like the idea that there are many things that happen with monarchs. We will mention eventually because I really like
Yeah.
what happens with the seed of this game and all that. Uh,
Yes, and the mechanic that I like in this game that I think only this game has is the active time events.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I really like that. Yeah.
Where you're playing and then an optional, an option comes up where you can see story from another place in the world,
Yeah.
and that kind of makes the world more alive, I guess you could say, because these things happen in
Yeah.
tandem, like the same time as you're playing, and you can see that as you are playing with Zidane somewhere in the world, you can check out where his buddies, the Tantalus troop,
Yeah.
what they are doing,
No, yeah, and
uh,
you can actually miss that, right? Like if you don't like,
and you can miss it.
yeah, and yeah, it's really interesting because when you get that, you also get like an idea of maybe some things are gonna happen eventually, or some things that you may encounter. So that's also really awesome. Uh, there are many things that we can mention about this game that is really that are really good. I particularly like, as I said, like the whole political aspect of it and the whole idea of like these kingdoms and all that understand what the world is like, because this world is covered by mist, right? And there's magic all around in a way. So basically, like the fact that there are magicians and you can actually create stuff that can shoot magic is part of how these people fight wars, and you can see it happening in a way. And the whole idea of the story kind of revolves around the mist and what that does to the world, and what people can how people can kind of right use that to their advantage. And we will get into a little bit more specific eventually, but it's just really cool. Like to me, it's one of the, like, not the few Final Fantasy, because I feel like they all kind of do it in a way, but I feel like this is one of the ones that does it in a very not effortless but like seamless way. Like you really say, oh yeah, so this is what will happen if these people have had these items or these powers. I really love that
Yeah,
about this game. Yeah.
yeah, I'm not very appreciative of heavy politics in my media, but uh, they're presented here in a such a light manner where you go,
Yeah.
okay, yeah, uh,
Yeah,
all right,
it's
this is
simplistic.
boring.
Yeah, no, it's not Game of Thrones. Like it's
Yes,
very simplistic, but you understand that in this world this will happen. Like for sure this will eventually happen because of how many things are happening. But again, if we get too much into the story, we're gonna get into spoilers. So before we get into that, I would like to talk about some mechanics that I really like about the game. I really like the idea of like each weapon having its own abilities that you can learn, and the fact that
yeah,
if yeah, you were gonna say
the weapons and the gear, like I think,
exactly,
Yeah.
yeah, and I really
yeah,
like that because in other games, it's interesting that sometimes when you get a new weapon, you kind of discard the other one, right? So this one kind of
uh,
forces you to use each one of them, right? So that you're able to learn whatever abilities it has. So
not so much force, but encourage. Yes.
yeah, exactly. And for example, like sometimes you may find yourself using a less powerful weapon because you're trying to learn a specific ability from it, so you can keep it and then move on to the more powerful one. And
Yeah.
I like how it plays you, like makes you have to make that decision. And there are some places even in the game where certain weapons are even like things like rules change and you have to use other weapons. But again, we're gonna get into that eventually.
Because
But
of
yeah,
elemental weaknesses.
stuff like that. Yeah.
Some weapons are stronger than others. Yeah.
So I remember that when I saw like the idea behind that, it was really cool. I also like the idea that there are certain combinations of characters that kind of work with one another. And I know that's something that other games do really well as well, but it's the first time I felt in a Final Fantasy like that actually happened. And this is kind of a spoiler, but honestly, it happens so early in the game that I'm just gonna say that the idea that Vivi and Steiner can like do a magic sword attack, it was really cool. Like like when I saw that the first time, was like, oh wow, like yeah, like team ups and all that stuff. I really like that, and it's just a little bit attention to details that I really like about the game. And yeah, I mean, I've been talking a lot, but like, do you guys like something specifically about how the game works in that sense?
I at least for me, the coming back to 4 characters per fight,
Oh yeah, do that.
the 4 instead of 3. Um, I like. It's not that I want 6 or 7 or 8, but it gives a little bit more variety to the gameplay and stuff like that. Also, the game is slower paced. The fights,
Yeah,
they're not as fast paced as the others. Like the time bar is slower in this game.
yeah, yeah.
There's less impactful magic in terms of buffs, in the sense that it's not game breaking like in some other games maybe.
Okay, okay.
And the fact that um, you don't have as many abilities as the other games, much like the older games where you only had a certain amount of abilities and that was it. You have that, and you have your weapons and your armor, and that's it.
Yeah, because in this game you kind of went for the idea of every single character has kind of their own job in a way or
Yeah,
class. So yeah, like BB couldn't become a monk, so he was always a black mage, and Steiner was always the knight, right?
yeah.
So yeah, I understand. It's simplistic, but also yeah, you need to understand like how to use them in certain ways where depending on the fight,
There's still a system. There's
yeah,
still a
yeah,
gameplay system that it's tied to, and um, like yeah, it's refreshing in for example, in 8 and 7, pretty much everybody could be anything that they wanted to.
yeah, yeah.
In the future, 10 and 12 too. Um, but that since it was marketed to be a return to the classic style gameplay and aesthetics and music, that's another thing. The music in this game is
Oh
one
yeah,
of the
yeah,
best
definitely, yeah.
soundtracks in Final Fantasy, at least for me.
No, yeah,
Um,
and there's so many. Again, I just like the attention to detail that this game gives to everything in it, honestly, because there's even songs for specific scenarios, and the songs like that they're only played once, and they're really good. Like all of them are really good, and when you can do that, like when you can just get to the point where you go, let's just make a really good composition for this particular part of the game that is not necessarily even important. It's just a fun part of it, and then you can make songs for that, and they're really good songs. You know that they really love what they're doing, because
yeah.
I do agree that this game has a lot of really awesome songs,
And
and yeah.
if you think about it, it was the last full game that Nobuo Uematsu composed for.
Is it really? Oh yeah, I didn't know that. I didn't know
Um, Final Fantasy X, he only composed the main theme, and I think in sporadically he did a couple of theme songs for the other Final Fantasies, but pretty much that was the last game where he did most
that.
of the soundtrack.
It's interesting because yeah, I think in 10 you do see a different style of music, so you
Yeah.
do see it a little bit different. So that makes sense. So that's really interesting. Leo, is there something else that you would like to mention about the mechanics or stuff like that that we haven't mentioned that were really cool for you?
You mentioned the abilities,
Yeah.
which I think was what I really liked, as well as the active time events. Mechanic wise, no, I think you guys covered most of it. Yeah.
Also,
The
the
rest should
limit
be yes. The
the
trans.
limit breaks were refreshing in this game,
Yeah.
though. It was
Yeah, the trans
similar.
system. Yeah.
Yeah, the trans system,
Yeah, that's
and
really
it
cool
was
as well. I like the idea that they kind of transform and become something. I mean, not they don't all transform, but they kind of change a little bit. Like for instance, Steiner kind of his like the thing covers his face, and he looks a little bit different. And of course, Zidane kind of changes. But I don't know. I like again. It's just the attention to detail. I really love that in games, and I feel like this game has a lot of that, even more than other entries. So uh, there's so many things, and I believe that I have to start talking spoilers because I just want to say things about certain moments and all that. So from now on, we're gonna be talking spoilers. So anything goes now, guys. So anyway, let's talk about like the story and all that. Like, what were some moments for you that were really awesome, story wise? Like I know some of mine that I want to mention, but I just want to see if you guys mention it first. But Roberto, yeah.
I mean, I think one of the more classic events in all this Final Fantasy and RPG series is Bahamut versus Alexander.
Yep. I
was gonna say that one. Okay.
Yes,
I agree.
I mean, even I had it as a wallpaper in my computer for like 5 years.
Yeah, I mean that's just an awesome scene. I couldn't believe it when I was seeing it. I couldn't believe that it was happening because I don't think to that point. And again, coming from 7 and 8, I had not yet seen a moment or like a CGI movie thing where you saw two like summons or eidolons as they call here fighting each other, and when they're Bahamut and Alexander, it was like, and when Alexander kind of does the wings and kind of again it looks so awesome. Like, yeah, that's the perfect fight. I got chills when I saw that moment, and I still get chills when I see that.
It's it's increasing because you start with, you know that the summons are powerful at the early game, and then you see different summons doing different things.
Guys, you see Odin doing one thing, like decimating one place, and then later you see Bahamut wreaking havoc somewhere else, and they keep like incrementing the power of these eidolons, and then finally you see Bahamut attacking the city, and you go, okay, they're screwed, and then comes Alexander and makes a jump out of Bahamut.
But I mean, even me playing at that time, I only had played Final Fantasy VIII. And I know from other Final Fantasies, Bahamut is, if not the main summon figure in the game, it's one of the more iconic summon figures.
Yeah.
And I would say the most iconic figure in the entire series as a whole, Final Fantasy series.
Yeah.
So when Bahamut appears, it's on.
Yeah, definitely.
Like, it's there, and so it also Alexander. I think Alexander is one of the least used as a powerful way summons. Like at that time, at least at that time.
Yeah, because I wouldn't be able to say that for.
No, I think Alexander has always been one of the more powerful ones. Maybe not more powerful than Bahamut.
But it wasn't used that way. It was always, I mean, it was powerful, but it wasn't used as a story point.
As a story element. Okay.
Yeah. Maybe that's more true. Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Again, I really I don't know. I just love how this game uses the summons and the eidolons. Because again, as you said, they just feel so powerful. Like they literally can change the world. They can make things go away. Like for example, like you got that where you were saying, Leo, about the Odin and like the tree. Like when that happened, when I saw that they were summoning Odin, and because all the time they're like, yeah, no, this tree is basically indestructible, like nothing can really do anything to it, and nobody has for a while, and blah blah blah. and yet you see like the queen or whatever being really smug about the whole thing. Like, yeah, sure, like I have a plan or something that we're gonna be doing, and then you see Odin, and again, if you've played Final Fantasy before, you go like, oh, I think I see where this is
Yeah.
going, and it literally happens. Like he cuts the tree down with a swing, and you're like, oh, okay, and literally like the tree is gone, like it's dead, that changes like the whole like how that world works, and Atomos also they use him to kind of destroy a place. I don't remember exactly where, but again, they just felt so powerful, like the most powerful I've ever really seen them, or I felt them in a story. And as you were saying, Roberto, that they use them to progress the story. It's not just like the moment with Alexander, like it's literally part of Alexandria was gonna be destroyed, and then they kind of revealed that Alexandria, like almost the whole place, is literally
the whole castle was the summon.
Yeah, was the summon.
It was like,
and that was so cool. Like I remember that I was like, yeah, like that's amazing. I want an Alexander castle. I want to be able to live there and be protected.
I wanted that summon.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you want basically all that. I mean, it is a little bit weird that eventually then you can use those summons and they just kill like little monsters and they do not destroy everything. But anyway, like that's the gamey part of the game, right? But I really love that, again, the summons. I really love how they were used. I like them, the story. I like the fact that, as I was saying, like the world understands that there's magic and that magic is powerful, and that, again, it's even more powerful than just simple soldiers and all that stuff. Which is something that I've in other games, not necessarily Final Fantasy, but other games, like sometimes it's a little bit weird that these places have so many people fighting for them when they have like these very big, powerful things that they could just use like instead. So I like the fact that they understand that to the point where, and I guess this is where Bibi comes in. Bibi and his kind, right? The black mages were manufactured to become like basically puppets with magic, right? And but very powerful ones at that. So they were kind of not robots, but I guess they were. You could make many of them, and they will be more powerful than any soldier and any army. So again, it just feels like they understand the world and they understand that they have to use that to be on top of each other. Like, and also again, I just like the details in the game, because in most games, like you have like status effects, right? And you have the status effect of Toad and Minnie and all that stuff. And I know that, for example, in 3, Minnie is very important. But the fact that when you get to the what's the place called? Like where cities? What's that place called?
Hold on, I got it somewhere.
Yeah, I don't remember exactly the name. When you tell me, I'm gonna say, yeah, that place. But anyway, the thing is that the like Sid, when you meet him, he's a toad or a frog. I don't remember exactly which one. And like
Lindblom, that's what he is.
Wimblum? Yeah, okay. So Wimblum.
Lindblom, yeah.
Lindblom, yeah. So that when you meet him, he's a toad, and like he can't be, like nobody can really make that curse go away except for his wife, right? His wife was the one that put him in the curse, right?
Yes.
Yeah, because he cheated, right? That was the idea of that, of what happened, right?
Yeah, I think it was something like that, yes.
Yeah, so again, it's just really cool that they use the elements or the status effects that you know from the games and put them in a world where, yeah, you have to deal with the fact that you're a toad for now until you find a way to get out of this. And then even at one point in the game, you use as a toad, trying to get everybody out of some cages or some things that they were kind of imprisoned in. And you see how powerless he really is. I just really love that. I also love, for example, in that same vein, And again, I know that other Final Fantasies kind of do this as well. But I know that, for example, Blank was his name, or one of the Tantalus.
Yeah,
Blanche?
I don't remember the name.
Yeah, I don't remember exactly.
Oh, Blank.
Yeah,
Okay,
Blank.
yeah, the guy with the red hair.
Yeah, I think he's like red hair, and he has like a bandana or something, or
Yeah.
something in his eyes. Anyway, like what happens to him is that he kind of saves the party by sacrificing himself and becoming stone. And I know that
Yes.
also happens in another game, but I have never seen that before, and it happened in this game. And they literally tell you it's like perma petrify or something like that,
Yeah.
and they can't really get him out. Of course, eventually they do, but at that moment it was really sad, like this guy helped us a lot, and now he's dead, and he's technically dead forever. I don't know, it just felt like the stuff that usually happens in battles that you can just easily fix with an item did affect like the world around you, and you had to deal with the consequences of that. Like if somebody got petrified, it would be as sad as what you just saw, And I don't know, I really love that from the game. I could keep rambling on. I have a specific other thing that I want to mention, but again, Leo, like, is there something especially from the story or specific moments or fights that you remember from the game that you will always remember from it?
Give me a sec.
Yeah, Roberto, like same question also.
Yeah.
I think more generally, I like that the crystals, the 4 crystals, were part again of the story.
Yeah.
Like it was something that was like a staple for Final Fantasy stories and stuff like that. It coming back, it was like Leo said, it wasn't I played Final Fantasy 8 first, and then 9, so I didn't have that nostalgia. But I recognize that, okay, yeah, I know where this is coming from. Not necessarily played it yet, but I know where this is coming from.
It is interesting that if you think about it, like, this is a game that we kind of loved more as we played the other Final Fantasies. Like when you played the other ones, like suddenly you saw how much care like you appreciated how much was put into 9. So it is really interesting that you can say that about a game. Like, you play the other ones and that game becomes even more awesome. So I did want to mention like one of the things that I always remember about the game. I don't remember the place specifically, but I remember there was a place that I believe that when you enter it, they kind of imply that everything is reversed, and you, like, at the moment they don't literally tell you what that means. They just tell you, keep in mind that when you get to this place, things work differently. Like, what you think is done one way is another. And I remember the specific place. I have to like look back to it, but it's the place that you had to keep, or you had to use your, like, the first weapons you got instead of the latest ones, because the latest ones hit for like 1 hit point or something like that. And the place, like, the whole idea of the place was that everything was the other way. So like the most weak magics, or like the weakest weapons, were now the strongest ones. So, and they didn't tell you that like outright. Like, they didn't tell you like, yeah, just change your equipment. Like, well, you had to kind of figure it out. And I always remember that because that was so cool for me. Like the idea that this place literally changed the rules of the game, and you had to kind of adapt yourself to that. And the fact that you, like, many people even sell their first weapons because they just said, we're not gonna use them again. And when you get to that point, if you don't have them, you're screwed. Like, you can't do anything about it. So then you have to go back to like one of the first places you went to that still sells that that weapon, buy it, and then go back, and now you can fight. And then you have to remember that when you get out of that place, you have like those really weak weapons. You have to change them again. And I remember like to me again, it was frustrating because it did happen to me. Like when I went there, I didn't have my first weapons, so I had to go back and buy them and all that stuff. But like on the back of my mind, I was like, wow, that's so clever. Like I've never really played a game or at least a Final Fantasy game or an RPG at that point, I guess, that played with with the rules of the game to the point where I really had to think about it. I really had to understand, like, oh, so this was going on. So potentially this is gonna work differently. Oh, and then it works differently. I think that at that point, like at that place, I'm not super sure, but I think that at that place, if you cure someone, you basically took life away from them. So again, it was like everything that you thought you knew was different. I only think that items were the only things that worked there, at least for restoration, right? So again, I really love that. I really love the idea of playing with the rules and all that stuff. So again, I remember exactly what it was. I don't know if you guys remember exactly what it was, but I know it was in the game.
I don't remember exactly, but I know what you mean.
Yeah. I really like that. I remember that. I really like that.
Something that I liked now that I remember, I just I had like a list of things, but the number one thing was the Bahamut and Alexander thing, and then Roberto said it, and I was like, damn it, and I forgot. Something that I liked a lot is you could say the racial diversity among the cast.
Yeah. Sure.
Which you also see kind of on 7 and 6. But in here it's more since you only have 8 party members, you don't have as much as you do on the other Final Fantasies. That's all you get.
Yeah.
And like half of them. Oh, hold on.
Yeah, 3 of them.
Okay, only one of them is human, and then you had only one of them was human, which is Steiner. Steiner's human.
Yeah.
And then you have Dagger or Garnet and
or Sarah.
Right. And Echo, they're their own race, their own summoner race. Who's I forgot the name of the.
Yeah, they have the horn.
The race.
Yeah,
but they had like horns. So they're their own race, right? But okay, they kind of look like humanoids. Fine. You have then Zidane. He looks humanoid, but he's not actually a human.
Yeah.
He's like another race. Okay, the other 4 are not very human looking, except for maybe Amaranth. I'm not sure which race he is actually. Maybe he's human.
But he has like a different, like a rooster or something like that.
That's very weird because I'm seeing the artwork by Yoshitaka Amano, and he looks like a human, but in character, like he has pale skin.
Yeah.
He has like braids and a lot of hair, and like even though the proportion of the rest of the characters are not really true proportions, his proportions are even weirder. Like he has big hands, big feet.
I remember that there was something about him. I think there was something animalistic about him. I don't know if it's that, but I believe that the cresting was something to do with that. But yeah, as you were saying, Leo, like not to get too hung up on that, right?
Yes. So I like that the cast is varied. It's different. It makes it more colorful.
Yeah.
More interesting, and it's something that I miss. I completely miss with the more recent Final Fantasies.
True that. I agree with that completely. Yeah.
So I really appreciate 9 for having a cast like that.
Yeah. We haven't actually talked about Kuya and like the whole like villain and stuff. Like, do you guys like Kuya?
Cujo for me was very cool at first, and then he kind
Yeah,
of
I agree.
was okay at the end. Uh, I I am Let's see. I appreciate that he was not the final boss, because if he were, it would have been a little underwhelming. The actual final boss battle for me, I found satisfactory, even though
Yeah, it's
even
kind of
though
random.
the
It was
even
out of
though the guy
nowhere.
that we fought at the end wasn't someone that we knew about ever in the game until then.
Yeah.
I found that fight to be more satisfactory than Kuja.
No, yeah, I agree
But
with you completely. Like at first, when you see him at first, he does seem really like sinister and just really uh interesting. Because like he's kind of like the power behind the power, right? Like he's helping the queen, he's helping what we perceive are the bad guys at that point, and
yeah, yeah. So he
we
had
yeah,
like a sort of Kefka in the
exactly,
beginning
exactly.
sort of role.
Yeah, and but yet like you kind of understood that he was the really powerful one, and you really wanted to know what he was doing. And again, he didn't really care about anything or anyone, uh, at least at the beginning. So I completely agree with you that he was very interesting at first, and then when you kind of went through the game, he got less interesting as you went along.
But it's
Yeah,
I wouldn't blame him about it too much.
yeah,
It's really, I think, because of Garland. Because once you knew that there was somebody above him,
yeah, yeah.
uh, and then his motives turned kind of one dimensional. He didn't really have like a Zuko type arc. If
Yeah,
you guys
yeah, yeah.
watched Avatar: The Last Airbender, where you get to know him a little better, and not that I'm saying we're expecting him to go like get a good guy, but
Yeah.
actually like. Because he did have reasons to be like he is.
Yeah, yeah.
His whole thing about him not having a childhood and therefore not having like a very big range of emotions, blah, blah, and that has to do with the way that he is. Uh,
Yeah.
but in the end, it kind of fell flat.
I think
I
they
did
could have
like
done more
Garland
with
a
that. Yeah,
lot.
definitely. And it's interesting because you saying that it does remember that, for example, in other games where he does appear, they literally play with the whole thing that he could easily be a good guy if certain things happen. Like for example, in Dissidia, the story for Dissidia, uh,
Hmm.
he's usually like on the edge. Like he helps the good guys many times, and then he kind of goes back to being a bad guy because, like in the end, he's like, "No, I'm bad," and that's basically it. But it is interesting that they kind of took the pieces that this game gave and gave him
Hmm.
a little bit more character, I believe, in those games.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, I can see Kuja being more interesting now that the game is over and you can use this character in other games. So I can see him being
yeah.
way more interesting in other games, since like his whole story and
Yeah.
his whole range of change.
And by the way, I know that people are listening. Maybe are like, "Are you kidding me?" Like the story of this idea. And again, I'm not saying the whole story. I'm saying that certain characters and certain things
Right.
that happen
That's
are
story of the
interesting.
city.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, I mean, he's not too high on my favorite villains list,
yeah,
but I think he fit the story, or at least the world, well.
yeah. Exactly, exactly.
Yeah, yeah,
And he, the personality and how how he went with the story, at least
right.
on the rest of the game. I think it went well. It wasn't detached from the game or anything like that.
And I think that's what matters to us the most. When we say like 9 is our favorite, it's not really because of the villains. It's more because of the world, because of
Yeah, yeah.
the hero's story and the player characters. That's what really makes the game for me at least when it comes to the story. Not really. It's not really because of the villains. And if you really stop to think about it, it doesn't really look like the villains are really the focal point of the game. Like you're not really supposed to go,
No.
wow, Queen Bran is so awesome and she's so bad.
Yeah. True that. Yeah.
No, it's not. It's not like for example Sephiroth, where yes, he's like a focal point of the story, and you're supposed to go, wow, that guy is so awesome.
Yeah, that guy's really
Or
powerful. Yeah, true that. Yeah.
yeah, or it's
I
not
think
like
the world is more of a focus than
yeah,
the villains.
the world is a bigger focus, and you can tell, and you can
No,
really
yeah.
appreciate it.
No, I agree with that completely. Again, I love when games create a world and then they kind of like people in that world act as I imagine them to act in that world. And I believe that this game does that perfectly. Like when people do things in this game, I understand. Okay, yeah, so that's what they will probably do. Maybe in a simplistic manner, you know. And
Hmm.
yeah, of course, there are many things that are very exaggerated and again, it's a game, so at the end of the day, it's not necessarily trying to be realistic; it's trying to be entertaining, right? But I even besides that, I do believe that I like they respected this world as its own, and they understood what this world was and what the rules were, and created a cast of characters that was really interesting in a world that was interesting to begin with. And yeah, I really respect that from this game, and yeah, when games can do that, I really it's less common than you think, honestly. Like there are many games that look really awesome, that have the best graphics, and all that, but they and a really interesting world, but they don't respect the rules. They kind of go really weird with different direction, different like character choices and all that. And I feel like in this game, at least for the most part, or at least for me, like for most of the game, you felt that connection. You understood what Bibi was going through. You understood what Zidane, how he was changing, understanding how to become an actual hero, right? You understood why Steiner was who he was and his whole commitment to the crown, but like he been the soldier, but he's trying to understand that like maybe the kingdom is not what's supposed to be. With Garnet, like trying to understand her all her backstory and where she came from, and dealing with the powers that she has, and the fact that they basically use her as just a weapon to be able to do those horrific things that, in a way, you can say that maybe she was responsible. I mean, she wasn't responsible, but the fact that she existed and was there, right, was what
Hmm.
led like the whole kingdom to be able to do those horrific things. So there's a lot of guilt there, and yeah, again, a lot of theatrics, of course, in this game, but the game is about that, right? It's about the whole idea of the big Ren becoming the hero, and I feel like Zidane and Garnet kind
I
of
mean, it starts like that,
yeah,
like
it
the
starts literally
little
starts like that.
theater.
Yeah. No, yeah, that's what I mean. That it literally it tells you the story it wants to tell, and then it tells it, and you and it's not like in your like it's not literally like it's literally the same story, but it does it really well. So I have to appreciate when they can literally do that, and still you go like, yeah, that was really cool, and I really like these characters. I feel like this game was good in many ways, and that was one of the big ways. So anyway, we are literally getting to the end of the podcast at the moment. So do you guys want to say anything like before we go, or yeah, anything about the game or something that you want to mention before we leave?
I'll say that for me, Final Fantasy IX is the best Final Fantasy game. Without including 14, but that's like another story. That's something else because 14 is an MMO, so it doesn't really count. I will say that if you're interested in playing 9, go for it. But perhaps you'd wanna play not all of them, but at least some of the previous Final Fantasies before this one,
Yes.
because that way you'll be
that.
able to better appreciate this one. I would say if
4 and
if
6
if you
at least.
if you were to ask me which ones, I'd say 4 and 6, and maybe the first one. Uh,
Yeah, I guess.
Maybe, yeah.
because
For
there are some references to one that really
yes,
really really drive home only if you played one. But it's not really necessary. But yeah, I do agree. 4 and 6, and maybe 1. It has references to all the other the previous Final Fantasies, but those are the 2 to 3 that I can recommend. And those are really great games. 4 and 6 are tremendous games that I really recommend. 1. It's good, but it's when compared to all of these other games, it's
they definitely improve with the next ones. The first one kind of sets the stage, but
it's dated. It's dated, but at least it's a short game, so you should be fine. So yes, definitely try out 9.
Yeah, at least for me, even though it's not for me, it's not the best, but it's at least top 3 for me in the list of Final Fantasy games. And it's more of it's something that they haven't done before. They haven't done since.
Yeah.
So it's something that I believe that when it happened, from Final Fantasy VI to Final Fantasy IX, there's 2 games in between. But it's one of those settings where you know that if they do that setting again, you're gonna recognize what came before, even though you haven't played it completely, or you still have like an idea of this makes sense. Like this is something that I feel like I've seen before. And the beauty with 9 is that at least for me, it made sense when I started playing, even though I haven't played the ones before. It made sense. Like I felt like the gang of thieves and the princess with the necklace and the black magic, the knight, the castle and the dragoon. Like you know these things. Like you have seen them before.
Yes.
And to make them in a good story and well written scripts and interesting stories and characters, it was definitely refreshing. Even if you didn't do it before, it was original, and if you played the other ones, it was refreshing.
Yeah, true that.
So,
I agree with that. Yeah. And as you were saying, it's really interesting that this game. I actually right now. I'm playing Final Fantasy VIII. I'm almost at the end, and the next one I'm gonna play is 9 because after playing like 3, 4, and 5, I do want to get back to it and see everything again. Because I already can make the comparisons, but as you were saying, Leo, literally if you do that and then play 9, you're gonna get a lot of things that game pays homage to. And that's definitely the best way to do it. And 1 for a specific reason, of course. But I agree with everything that's been said today. I really like the game. It seemed one of the top for me. And it's not necessarily in the top or anything. I really like it. I really enjoy playing it. I always remember, as I was saying, I really was living it. I was literally playing the game. And I always like just going back to Final Fantasy in general, but 9 always has that it's just enjoyable to play. So I recommend everybody.
Let me interrupt you here because we keep saying that 9 is not a favorite. I think that if you're looking for the definitive Final Fantasy experience, then you should try 14. However, as a standalone single player game, 9 for me is the best one. I'm gonna just say that because we're all saying, oh, it's not really the best for me. No, okay. Single player standalone game for me, 9 is the top. Okay, right.
True that. I get it. I meant personally, right? Personally for me, maybe it's not my favorite, but I do believe that it is a very solid Final Fantasy entry, and as you were saying, maybe even the best entry for people that want to understand what a Final Fantasy kind of is. Maybe that's the best one to go to. So I do agree with that completely. So anyway, I think that pretty much wraps up what we were saying about, or what we want to do with the Why We Love podcast for this game. I'm pretty sure there are many things that we kind of missed or we didn't mention about the game that that we like. There are many things that happen in the game that are very cool and interesting. So yeah, let us know in the comments anything else that you that you know from the game or you love from the game. We would really love to hear to hear them or to read them. Before we go, Leo, do you want to plug something or anything about related to Nine, or it could be related to anything, to be honest?
Play 14.
Not really. I'm
Play 14. Play 14.
Yeah, I do recommend to play 14, even if you don't like MMOs. No, this month is where there's an event called RPG a Day, where some of us that play tabletop RPGs make a post each day related to a question that is given. So everyone answers like the same question. That's related to each day. Like each day has a different question.
Okay.
So I'll give you the link so you can see my blog post or you can follow me at twitter.com/LW Cardona. I'll give it to you, Javier, so you can post it.
Yeah.
So I'm posting stuff, answers that I've given, stuff like why do I love RPGs. It's a lot of answers. If you've been hearing you've been hearing me from the other podcasts, you kind of already heard some of these answers. But I expand upon some of them already. So if you're interested in that, then check it out.
Check it out. Definitely, I'll put that in the links. Roberto, something you want to plug?
Right now there's nothing really going on my part, but play the RPGs, play the games, play Final Fantasy 9, I guess,
and also play 8.
So play 8. Play 6 before that.
I have to play 6. I don't know. Again, it's like that and Chrono Trigger are the two games that everybody tells me that I have to play, and I still haven't been able to play them. But I do want to play them. So I know a little bit about them. It's not that I don't know anything about them. I know kind of the whole idea, and it's interesting, but I haven't actually played them. So have to get on that.
The less you know, the better it is, because you don't set expectations, because there's a lot of expectations out there.
True that.
People,
So again, for us, thank you for listening to the podcast. Again, we do a podcast every other week. So, for example, when this podcast is put up in our YouTube channel, the next week there won't be, and then the next week there will be, and we kind of go between the usual spot and Why We Love. So keep that in mind. Also, every week we do we feature a song from a game, so that you can maybe add it to your playlist, and that's how we call it. We're basically just music from games that you can use either to work or just to listen to or just to remember that game and maybe even play it eventually. 9 will be on that list for sure because of what we mentioned about the music. So please check that out when you can. And if you want us to share one of your favorite songs there, let us know as well. We do one request from people, and we, depending on whether we like it or not, we also put it as part of the list and give you credit for it. So it's super awesome. Keep that in mind. Keep listening to everything that we're doing, and thank you for watching, listening to this podcast. Play Final Fantasy 9 when you can, or replay it if you played it before. And we'll see you next time.
Later, guys.